You're listening to Africa Business Radio, where you get up-to-date insights on the Africa business landscape. Log on to www.africabusinessradio.com. Your favorite shows are available on podcasts. Download them on our website and mobile app. Africa Business Radio, towards a profitable Africa.
Africa is rising, they say, but Africa must rise with its people. There is no Africa without its people. How then do we harness Africa's wealthy people through social change and development? Social Conscience with NASA commits to Aspiration 6 of the Africa Agenda 2063 and the Global Development Goals. We advocate social change and development that will inspire the transformation that keeps Africa rising. Join us every week at 6:30 p.m. GMT +1.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Social Conscience with NASA SCWN. We're broadcasting live as always from the Africa Business Radio studio in Lagos, Nigeria. And I am, as always, your host with the most, NASA. So today it's a very exciting topic we have to discuss, and it's interesting because of the guest that I have, but I'll share that shortly. So I don't know if you remember that recurring statement at business school, you know, the one where they say the primary objective of any business is to maximize shareholder returns, right? So in other words, make as much money as possible for the owners of the company, which for me is a pure capitalist statement or stance. Boeing, the American airplane manufacturer, for decades was one of the great American success stories. And some schools argue that the shareholder maximization capitalism mentality brought the company to its knees. So this is referring to the devastating 737 MAX crashes that happened. So the alleged focus on short-term profits maximization affected the new plane's quality and safety characteristics. Fortune magazine reported that between 2013 and 2019, Boeing spent $16 billion on research and development and $43 billion on stock buybacks. So these were the priorities management and the board chose to live by. They spent more than 2.5 times, more money on repurchasing their stock than creating a more competitive and safer product. So again, it was all about making money for the owners. For me, I say that COVID, more than anything else, has forced more people to be more attuned to their social conscience, including business leaders, and maximizing shareholders' returns has become less acceptable. There's increasing activism for stakeholder maximization, capitalism, where interests of customers, employees, suppliers, etc. are now important and need to carry the same weight. So for me, I'm wondering how the avid capitalists are reacting to what I may call the new social order. And the topic is the 21st century capitalist dilemma: social impact or profitable value creation. Joining me shortly in conversation are two gentlemen, business leaders, looking to share their perspectives on this topic. And I'm looking forward to have this conversation with them. But before they join me, please stay with me as we take this quick commercial break.
You're listening to Africa Business Radio, where you get up-to-date insights on the Africa business landscape. Log on to www.africabusinessradio.com. Your favorite shows are available on podcasts. Download them on our website and mobile app. Africa Business Radio, towards a profitable Africa.
Africa is rising, they say, but Africa must rise with its people. There is no Africa without its people. How then do we harness Africa's wealthy people through social change and development? Social Conscience with NASA commits to Aspiration 6 of the Africa Agenda 2063 and the Global Development Goals. We advocate social change and development that will inspire the transformation that keeps Africa rising. Join us every week at 6:30 p.m. GMT +1.
Welcome back, and if you're just tuning in, it's Social Conscience with NASA on Africa Business Radio, and the topic is the 21st Century Capitalist's Dilemma: Social Impact or Profitable Value Creation. In March 2019, the World Economic Forum published the white paper called The Modern Dilemma: Balancing Short and Long-Term Business Pressures. Now, before I chose my topic, I hadn't even seen this paper, so it's quite interesting and obvious that this conversation is timely. So one of its conclusions was that corporate governance is undergoing changes arising from shifts in the balance of power, responsibility, and accountability. And investors, regulators, society, and businesses were being swept into the era of stakeholder capitalism. COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated the shift in business norms that stakeholder activism pursues and the imperative of moving from words to actions. With this context, business leaders the world over are forced to reflect and perhaps make some necessary adjustments because, quite frankly, it's a stakeholders world we operate in. To share first-hand perspectives as business leaders operating in the African environment with its peculiarities, I have with me two business leaders from the financial services sector who I refer to as the ultimate capitalist. In no particular order, I have joining me remotely Uzoma Dozie. He's one of Nigeria's leaders in the financial sector and the last group managing director of Diamond Bank Nigeria. He is the founder of Sparkle, a mobile-first platform for Nigeria's retail sector, using technology to power financial inclusion at scale. At Diamond Bank, Uzoma was responsible for overseeing the corporate and commercial arms of the bank. He holds a BSc in Chemistry, University of Reading, and an MSc in Chemical Research from UCL, and an MBA from Imperial College London. Uzoma runs angel investment and mentorship platform Black Knights, and also the tech-focused TV show TechTurks, where he interviews leading entrepreneurs and digital pioneers. The second guest is in the studio with me, and he is Adeni Adenubi, aka Niyi. He's the Executive Director, Investment Management and Investor Relations VFD Group PLC, which is a group of financial services companies. Niyi has over 15 years of experience in institutional and corporate banking, investment management and consulting. His vast experience in the financial sector comes from working in private equity, venture capital and financial advisory in some of the top firms in London. He is the chairman of Ancoria Asset Management and also serves on the boards of several companies where he works on providing strategic direction for the needs of companies to operate at full potential and efficiency. Niyi is passionate about corporate governance and brings this to bear on all the boards on which he serves. He holds a degree in sociology from the University of Ibadan and is currently undergoing the Owner-President Management OPM Executive Program at Harvard Business School. To my listeners, please feel free to weigh in by sending in your questions or comments to Africa Biz Radio, that's one word, Africa BIZ Radio, on Twitter with the hashtag SCWN. Welcome, Niyi and Uzoma. Very powerful profiles, very capitalist, financial services, equity, everything, you know. So right conversation with you guys. Thank you for accepting to have this conversation and to share your personal views on the topic, which I find particularly timely. So, hello, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Nasser. It's a pleasure to be here.
Hello, Nasser. Thank you for inviting us to this very interesting topic.
Absolutely interesting, and I'm happy that you're just as excited as I am to have this conversation. The only thing is I'm not sure why, because again, I'm the one wearing the socialist hat, and I'm the one who's always harassed for not, for thinking too much about the people and not necessarily making money. And these are the conversations I've had in the past with me. So, by way of starting, I'm just wondering who to start with first. Maybe I should let you do a quick introduction of what you do at your organization. I know I read the profile just in light of this topic, so I think I'll start with me first.
Okay, thank you, Nasser. Thanks. It's a pleasure to be here, and the topic is extremely interesting. You and I have had debates over the years as to, what's the role of capitalism in the new world, so to speak. And like I've said to you consistently, the balance is what is required. At VFD Group, we're quite socially conscious, actually. But in my recent interview with CNN, if you are socially conscious and you don't make any profits, then your businesses are also unsustainable. Right. So it's a great idea to do good, to manage all your stakeholders, but it's also extremely important to have those core capitalist interests, which is to make money. But we're flexible. We've always been flexible.
Right.
We've always taken our social responsibilities quite seriously. I have oversight over the ESG portfolio in VFD Group.
Okay.
And we do a bit of CSR in our local office environment.
Okay.
And we also extend this CSR to some of the schools that we're associated with. We've gone back to give back. And we're incredibly supportive of our staff to be able to make them have balanced and robust lives, which are a key part of our stakeholders. So our mindset is that you're correct. I think this is a topical issue for these times, and I think it's the right topic.
Right.
And I think that the inequality that's happening in society today also requires companies to take more interest in dealing with social issues.
Fantastic. Thank you, Nee, for that. So, to you, Uzoma, the financial inclusion space at scale, how is Sparkle, being socially responsible?
Okay, so at Sparkle, one of the reasons why I started Sparkle was just an extension of what I was doing at the Diamond Bank.
Right.
And we thought that we would use digital technology to actually extend and actually scale.
Right.
I think there's a limit to what you can do with brick and mortar, and there's a limit to how you actually take service to people. Now, my view of financial inclusion is that financial inclusion is like agriculture. It's a large spectrum.
Right.
The financial inclusion when it comes to the bottom of the pyramid.
Right.
But there's also financial inclusion from the small business perspective. We have over 40 million businesses that are financially excluded, and if they're excluded from society, from not even from a financial perspective, from tax, and everything goes hand in hand. They have identity. If there's no identity, you cannot be fully into the society, and that's why that tax. You have a few people, who are actually taking the burden of building out that those social resources that are required to feed people, health, education, and everything.
Right.
And at Sparkles, we're focusing on playing our role in development from a small business perspective, and also an education one. Now, I agree with you. You have to balance, and that balance, you have to balance in economic prosperity and social development. And it depends on the context. And I have this great quote from Abraham Lincoln that says, you cannot strengthen the weak by weakening the strong.
That's
you
very
cannot develop prosperity by discouraging thrift, and you cannot help the wage earner by pulling down the wage payer. And what that tells you is that you must always have a balance between economic prosperity and social development. And for any company to be sustainable, you have to take all this into consideration, and you have to take your stakeholder into consideration.
Right.
And when you're in the public sector and private sector, the contexts are different, and I guess we can discuss that further during the conversation.
Fantastic. Thank you, Uzoma. That what you've just said is the perfect segue to a question that I have, and it's around the kind of companies that are succeeding, and it's just basically finding this right balance, right? So findings reportedly show that the most successful corporations by financial performance are also the most just in terms of, trying to do the right thing by their stakeholders, and more fair corporations in how they run, in terms of how they run their business. So basically, high performing and most just companies are the ones with a conscience, and they optimize the interests of those critical stakeholders. And so when you talk about balance, and I think it's easy to have these conversations and say it and write it on paper, but how realistic is it operationalizing that, especially when they have diverse interests, right? These different groups of stakeholders. So we're having a conversation before the show started, Uzoma, when I asked about Diamond Bank and how making that decision to sell or to merge, and you said it was in the interest of the stakeholders, and I made a point to say that but employees were didn't particularly see that way, even though I can sort of see after the fact that maybe in fact it was in everybody's best interest. So how do you strike that balance across all the different stakeholders?
Okay, and that's a very simple question to answer. The biggest stakeholders, as far as I'm concerned, are customers and employees. Those are the biggest stakeholders. The next ones are, of course, your regulators and then your shareholders. Now, let's start with customers. And what we're trying to do, we're trying to actually give them a bigger platform, access more services, access more reach. And that's always the objective. The value of any company is the number of active customers that you have on your platform. Then we go to employees. We are in a country where bigger is better, and bigger actually gives you a bigger platform to do things. And and it's like a storm. When you're in a storm, bigger ships survive storms than smaller ships. Right. And so when I look at the employees of Diamond Bank, of the new merged entity, right, and see who is doing well, right, and who is going to be laid off, or who has a better security, we definitely do things. So when you look at it from job security, right, it's there. When you look at customers, access to services is there. When you look at finally the regulator and taxes, because the regulator there is interested in making sure there's financial system stability, and that people are employed and they have jobs and they can pay taxes in which they can use to build infrastructure for people. And then finally, the people who have invested in the business are getting better returns than they got before. Right. And so everybody's happy. I'm looking at everybody and thinking, and so when I look back 2 years later, I think it's a win-win.
Fantastic. Okay, so I'll come to you, Ni. So Uzoma says, the most critical stakeholders are employees, customers. Do you agree? What are your views? And what's VFD doing?
I think it's the customers and then employees. And I also agree with that. Because,
you do?
Customers are directly correlated with your profitability. If you cannot serve your customers right, they'll go somewhere else and you will lose your money, right? So they're always the number one, right? But a very close second in our company is our employee. Right. So it's very important, especially now that we're hiring like young people. We have a graduate trainee program. These people come straight from university. Millennials and Generation Z are very different in terms of their aspirations. So it's very important for us to start building our culture and our philosophy as a company to manage them so that they can be optimal. We also have things like the minimum pay that we pay people. We try to say that no one that works in VFD should earn less than a certain amount of money, which is very important for us, so that they can at least have a basic kind of living that, especially with inflation at 14% all the time. So I completely agree in respect of the priority of our stakeholders. Yes, so, of course, our regulators are also quite important. And on the last but not the least is our capital providers. our bankers, our equity providers, our shareholders. They're very important. They're equally as important. But I say that they come last because if we serve all these other guys right, then they're happy. Then they'll always be happy because that way they will have had some good shareholder returns.
Okay, fantastic. I mean, you know, you're the Executive Director, Investment Management and Investor Relations. And so speaking about this, what I call the new social order, which is basically this move from shareholder maximization to stakeholder capitalism, or, you know, as they call it. How, what is the reaction, or what are the investor sentiments on value creation, stakeholder capitalism, and how are you responding to that as an organization?
I think that the investment the investors are ready for this change.
Okay.
I think, like you said in your intro at the beginning, I think COVID has accelerated the pace for this for most people.
Right.
I think the days of just running businesses for primarily and solely for shareholders is long gone. I think even the staff now, our employees, demand that we're socially conscious.
Right.
When we started our ESG program at the company, it was also a way to make our internal stakeholders quite happy, because they've been pushing for it for a long time. For our first 5 or 7 years, we were quite limited in the CSR and ESG type approach that we had. But ever since we became quite successful, we've had the ability to be able to give back, and that's encouraged our staff to participate more in some of the things that we're doing.
Okay, fantastic. Uzoma, so I'm coming to you with this same question, and you know, in terms of investors, potential investors, and Sparkle, I suppose, what are the sentiments that you see, and how are you reacting to that in terms of what the expectations are?
You know, first of all, I think there are two issues.
Okay.
And so I'll tell you like a little story. One day I was walking with my daughter. She was 16 then, and that was 2 years ago. And she goes, "You know, Dad, you know, like I'm having a midlife crisis." I said,
"No."
That's a life crisis.
Yeah. The way that we're treating the world and dealing with the world and wasting and pollution, right?
Yeah.
We only have about 20 years left before the world, you know, goes to
grand total.
So from that perspective, like, you know, I'm halfway through my life, and really and truly, so when we started Sparkle, we were going to do two things. We were going to make money from doing good, and we were also going to play a role in protecting the environment, and simple things that we started off with. The fact that, first of all, we're paperless, completely paperless.
Yeah, you started that in Diamond Bank.
We're not burning anything. The fact that we even before COVID, we were doing remote working. We're like, listen, come to the office when it's convenient, because when you're in traffic, you're burning more fuel, for example. And when everyone comes to Sparkle, we give them one of these nice bottles, and but we don't want, so we're trying to reduce plastic usage. So we have one plastic.
Okay.
So we have if you go to our roof has solar panels. So even as a startup, we actually spent on what we didn't need to spend. If we just wanted to be economically from the beginning, by saying there's a balance, and there is actually it's good economics, right? Yeah. To actually, from a social perspective. So the power, the diesel that we use is minimal today, right? We don't have paper, so we don't have plastic bottles storing in many places, and we extend this to our customers, and part of that social development is education. This is why this is why you should do this. And this is the benefit. The next step for us, actually put it down in numbers so people can see how much you can save.
That's right.
Yearly. Because you can talk it till the skies come home. You have to show it by action, and then you have to show it by the number. And so that's what we're doing, and we're very proud of it. And there's so many more other things we're doing. So for us is, how do we leverage technology, right, to be economically efficient, but also add to society, because it is impossible for Nigeria to continue going the way it is going. You can't have any more school books. You can't have people going to school every day. So COVID is actually a blessing in disguise. COVID is a wake up. COVID is one of those biblical things where, you know, you get Saul got struck by lightning on the way to Damascus. and became poor.
That's a nice analogy.
It's an awakening, and that's exactly what we're doing. And that's exactly what COVID is for. It's awakening. And so that's what we're doing. And for us, COVID has just accelerated everything that we're doing and actually validated our cause.
Absolutely. And Uzoma, sorry, you're going to say something.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to congratulate Uzoma on their on what he just mentioned with the solar panels and what they're doing with on the environmental side. You're far ahead of us in that light. I knew that. So let me just first put it out there. You're far ahead of us, and I'd like to congratulate you. And I assure you that we'll be emulating the same on the environmental side.
Everybody did that. That would be great. So for us, we don't want to be the only ones doing it.
Right.
Everyone.
Yeah. But on the social and the governance side, I think we've done quite a lot.
Yeah.
In our organization. Okay. But we'll definitely be topping on the environmental side. Yeah.
Fantastic. And you know what? I'm happy that I'm actually having this conversation because I think, in truth, right, I don't think that everybody's going to do everything at once, but the fact that you're actually thinking about it and you know that you need to take certain steps, for me, is like success. And I was going to comment, Uzoma. So when you talked about paperless, I remember in Diamond Bank when you used to force us not to use paper. And, and I say that you have very un-Nigerian views. Again, I say that because, typical traditional Nigerian banks at the time couldn't understand not having paper, and it was just very...
Please don't judge, I still print.
I'm not... And I'll just come to you with that question.
I still print sometimes. Sometimes I can only read on paper. And I have paper with me now in the studio.
So it's good to, talk, walk the talk. What is it that they say? Just basically let your... put your money where your mouth is, basically. So fantastic stuff. Okay, guys. So, gentlemen, let me not say guys, because you guys are my bosses. Okay, my next question then is around, so do you believe in this whole stakeholder capitalism over shareholder capitalism? Do you agree with the idea, and do you think it makes sense for claims in Nigeria? Is this just a European or American thing? Who would like to go first on that one?
I can shoot first. Yes. Okay. So I actually sincerely believe in it.
Okay.
I think about 6 years ago, I read this book by a French economist called Thomas Piketty. Okay. Called Capitalism in the 21st Century.
Oh, interesting.
And he was just basically, the summary is that the trend in which the world is going, we're going to see more poverty, more famine, more climate change dislocating farmers, creating more inequality in the world. Okay. For me, that was a wake-up call for me personally, because it was just suggesting that the world was returning to an age where the middle class was being eradicated, which we'd had over the last 100 years. And I just could picture a world where, as in Nigeria, for example, where the inequality is just so wide, there will be security issues
as we have now.
As we have now. So at that point, I said, for me personally and for VFD Group, we'll be very conscious to educate our shareholders as to the importance of all stakeholder management. The environment in which we're operating must benefit directly from what we're doing is absolutely important. Our staff must directly be beneficiaries, both in terms of salary and profit sharing and just general standard of living. We will not squeeze our staff just to maximize or earn an extra dollar. So all those things.
They use David to kill Goliath.
Exactly. So all those things are very important to me when I came to that realization about 6 or 7 years ago, and I've tried to incorporate them in the policies that shapes the group's ESG and CSR policies.
Oh, fantastic! So when you talk about your own personal awakening, I was going to ask, so does that have any bearing on how you approach this this concept within an organization? Does your personality come through, right? So if you, I'm the ultimate socialist, but then I'm able to think logically and also say, we need to strike a balance because indeed we must make money.
Yeah.
So what if at the point when you started to think like this and nobody had that sort of consciousness, was there any resistance, and how did you try to then sort of persuade people?
Yeah, I think there's always resistance to change, but in my situation there was none. I was just the first to get there.
Right.
But it's quite logical when you just look at the calculation that he did. R is greater than G.
Right.
The return on capital will always exceed the growth rate of the economy, which means that richer people will continue to go in a certain direction, and if you don't incorporate the right policies, you'll be squeezing the middle and getting people poorer. Once that logic was clear to everybody, the onus became on everybody to try to chip in to do what they could do individually and collectively as a company. So it wasn't that hard to do. And even on the investor relations side, where I manage, even our local investors are also tuning to the ideas. When we have foreign calls, they ask us those questions. What are you doing for ESG?
Okay.
It's not been that difficult, I think. With COVID also, we've been pushed in that direction, or it's been easier for us to have those conversations rather than before.
Okay, great to hear that. Uzoma, so did you have an epiphany, or it's just inborn? You've always just felt like, we need to strike a balance between social good and profitability.
You're muted.
Uzoma, you're muted?
So I think, it's a very straightforward answer, but very, very complex, but not so straightforward.
Okay.
Because sometimes, for me, it's stepping back and thinking, okay, today, people are actually adopting digital now because during the lockdown they've been forced to use it and begin to realize the economic benefit. Without that, they wouldn't have done it. That they would have actually spent more resources or invested more resources to getting people to do it. And this whole stakeholder capitalism and that word the success depends on alignment of stakeholders. And then when you talk about stakeholders, you have to think about all the stakeholders that play, and the two big ones, public and private sector. Now, we hear that with private sector, we are long. So for the business to be, for you to have a successful, sustainable company, you're thinking long term, taking short term decisions that do not impact long term. Now, in the context of Nigeria, we are also now working under 4-year political governments where policies change after 4 years. And so it is a very, very, very difficult road to walk. And so it's very different, but there's no economic prosperity without social benefit. Simple fact. Today, we're trying to move people from physical to digital because we know that is the future. They're going to be globally sustainable. But to do that, you have to educate. You have to educate. You have to make sure that people's welfare are taken care of. So that means that the organization, you have to identify who these stakeholders are, because they're the ones who are providing services to. I cannot do financial inclusion if you have no money. I cannot do financial inclusion if you can't read, or if you can't have access to a smartphone. You cannot go digital as well. So you have to realize, now, as an organization, if I want to make good profit, and if my view of being successful is very short term, and within these 3 years of this government, or the next 2020 till 2023, then my views of stakeholder capitalism are going to be very skewed toward, let's make as much money based on investing. Let us make as much money as we can to get the hell out of here, because nobody me be president. That's the reality. And you have to solve that and say, okay, my legacy is that I want to make an impact. So it's not about returns. It's like, what is for us, for me, in Diamond, the return for us was actually the impact and that transformational change. Because in the end, that profit, seeing what little you do, just the fact that somebody opens a bank account and that can transform their life. Money, they can go to school, they don't lose money, they don't get. It is actually transformational. The future project that we did, and really, after a while, how much money makes you happy? Not really, but making people happy. Like when I was young, when Bill Gates initially gave his money away to charity, I thought this guy is completely nuts. But now you get it. In fact, he's more powerful from an impact perspective than he was putting software on millions of desktops in the world. And that's what it's all about. In the end, on your deathbed, it's like, what did you do? It's not the money. It's like platform. And I guess that's what people are beginning to realize, especially with the advent of COVID. People are thinking, we can go today and money is not going to help you. Money is going to help a lot of people who have had COVID.
Okay, fantastic, Uzoma. So, and it's interesting that you talk about this whole sort of awareness, and when you realize that, you know what, it's the money doesn't actually make you happy. And I find that a lot of business leaders or people who've been successful in corporate world are also then moving into the space of philanthropy and sort of like that whole narrative of I've had this career success, and then the way I feel like I can feel fulfilled is then to give back to society, and that, but it also still looks like it still seems transactional, like it's giving back, right? But I still feel that, you know, there's still some capitalist agenda at the back of it. So, Nii, what do you have to say about this?
I think there's a way that the world works. Okay. That until we find a better way, we just have to use it. So I completely understand what you're saying. Okay. Right. But if I give money to a cause, typically I want something back in return. Right. Right. And if that's the motivation for me to want to do well and, you know, still make that cause happen, that'll be my legacy.
Then it's not bad, right?
Then it's not that bad.
I agree.
Yeah. So,
I agree.
Yeah. So I particularly like the kind of philanthropy that is done in America, right? Americans give away more money than anybody in the world. Yeah. They also make more money than anybody in the world. But when they build a wing in a hospital, or when they build a new library or research center in a university, they kind of want it named after them or stuff like that. People tend to complain about that, you know, there's an ulterior motive.
Showing and telling.
Exactly. But in the grand scheme of things, having if you're motivated by ego or whatever, but still wanting to leave a lasting legacy, and somehow you affect millions of lives that will pass through that hospital or that school for many centuries and decades after, I don't think it's that much of a thing to give. Okay, that's the way I look at it.
And it's fair, and it's a fair way to look at it. Someone, this is a very weird question, and I was having this conversation with a friend prior to this show, and he had said, you know, so if I make my money through very dubious means, so something like using like blood money, for instance, and then I start to give back, is that give back valid? Because the source of your wealth is questionable. Uzoma, what do you have to say to that?
Well, it depends. I mean, like that. I mean, if you're giving, I mean, like, you know, you don't know where. I don't know where most people's money is come from. But I see. It depends. I see what you're doing. Right. But if you're giving, and if you're adding back to society, it's a good thing. You never know. I mean, like, and back to your last question. You know, capitalism is always going to. It's required.
It is, right? Actually, I agree.
It's just like evolution. I mean, it's a survival of the fittest. The reason why people survive and thrive and human race thrive because we want to live. Right. We want to forever. And so without that hunger, capitalism is hunger. Without that hunger, it's hunger with empathy, looking after people, looking after your tribe. Right? If you don't go out and hunt, you're going to die. If you're going to share. And so for capitalism is actually a requirement of life. Right? As we said in the beginning, it's a bit of a balance. But in some instances, you have to be completely capitalistic and deal with socialism much later. And it's an instance. So like
this is where we disagree.
Right now, it is more socialism and less capitalism because we need
the world
to make sure the world survives so we can go back to our capitalistic nation. So right now, it's like everybody don't have money unnecessarily because to make sure businesses survive. People are actually, working together that they've never done before, because this is the time for the biggest dose of socialism.
Yes.
Once we solve the problem, everybody back to your tents, let's go back to war. But right now, we're at peace, because that's what is required. It can't be socialism or capitalism.
I agree.
And like business, you need to know which hat to wear anytime. And as a leader, you have different hats.
Yeah.
And this is the time for a bit of socialism and holding.
Fantastic, Uzoma, you're right, because in truth, you can't, I think, so in summary, what you've just said is there's a time for everything, and this time that we're in is for socialism. And I remember at the beginning of COVID, and when, people, I was obviously part of the school that believed that, everybody stay at home and let us survive, because COVID is killing us. And, some people, the people who I call the capitalists are like, no, but people need to work, the economy needs to run. And I'm like, well, but the economy won't exist if there are no people, right? So if everybody dies of COVID, right? So what would make the economy run? And so yes, absolutely right. There's a time for everything, and indeed, this is the time for wearing the socialist hat. Do you agree?
Well, I do agree, but at the height of the lockdown,
right,
it was very obvious that in a place like Nigeria, where there were no social safety nets,
correct,
asking people to stay at home, you think you're doing good, but you're not doing good, because they're hungry,
Sure.
They can't feed, the children are crying and dying in the present, so they became aggressive. I believe that the fallout of NSAS
absolutely
was as a result of that. So I thought that as opposed to a complete lockdown, Nigeria's situation was quite unique, being that they didn't have social safety nets like Europe, and for that reason we needed to have a more
balanced approach
right, to handling that problem.
I mean, so I think, and I hear you, and that's actually the right thing to do. But again, what if COVID really took everybody out, right?
So I saw it as the risk of COVID, dying from COVID, and then dying from hunger.
From hunger?
Yeah.
So which is worse? How do you choose?
At the time, I felt like the risk of dying from hunger for like maybe 40 million Nigerians, was really high.
Right.
And, I don't think 40 million Nigerians would have died from COVID.
Really?
Yeah. But the context we're in Europe, they have all the data. So they know how many people die of malaria, they know how many people die of X, Y, Z.
That's true.
COVID is a pandemic for them. But in Nigeria, Lassa fever, more people have died from Lassa fever, more people have died from starvation, more people have died from many other malaria than COVID. So when somebody walking out and saying he don't wear mask, it's logical. You think that is not case, but no, his story is completely different from everybody else, and we don't have the story. And even the numbers that we're seeing every day, how many Nigerians have died from COVID? The numbers that are giving up, not alarming.
Yeah, but because they're not reporting, Uzoma, that's why. Because they're not reporting.
Nobody has given us the numbers of people that died from Lassa fever, malaria,
or hunger.
Or hunger. So you have to put it in context and understand why people are saying, screw this mask, screw X, Y, Z. Our problem is bigger than COVID. But the only way you can educate people is give them that data.
That's right.
So they give them that. If you don't give them that data and show them, because it's either okay, there's no data, so it's God will protect me, because nobody else is protecting me. And that's the way when you go to Europe, go to UK, they'll tell you every year how many people died of car accidents, how many people died of so many things.
That's true. You have that data.
We are flying blind, and so we're now following people and saying COVID is our problem. Our problem is
oh my goodness, those are my very interesting views. Okay, so maybe I should ask a question around COVID and COVID, right? And we Nii made a point about with not having safety nets, and the private sector had to come in to play that role, and we see how that turned out. And I think that the private sector's hearts or minds were in the right place, but somehow we managed to still not make that a success. We've seen some of the what's it called, the materials, right, from COVID being sold, etc. What do you guys have to say about that as private sector leaders?
I think so. Like, it's an infrastructural issue.
Okay.
It could be capital. It could be anything else.
Right.
Tell me something. Look, if you wanted to today, if you wanted to give 10,000 naira to every person that is unemployed in Nigeria, how are you going to do that? What infrastructure are you going to use? The problem is not a capital problem. The problem is that, and that is why, you know, this I hope that this new project of, you know, identity is going to succeed. Because first of all, you have to identify everyone, and you have to. I mean, like, if government wants social development, you have to get everybody digitally identifiable. And so instead of giving money, is like give people a smartphone. There's build the infrastructure out so that when you want to deliver sustenance to people or palliative, you're not going to the right person. There's no ghost citizens or ghost workers. So that investment, no matter how big that investment is, right, it will be far less, right, than the amounts you would ghost people. And I think that is so that for me, I like the name project. I hope it is carried out to the extent. And once all that is about data and information. Once you have information from people, then you're going to take smarter decisions, more cost-effective decisions, and then we will be able to solve all these pandemic issues. Till now, we're just we're not doing a blitzkrieg. We're just pouring a lot of people in place and hoping that it will hit.
It will catch.
What do you have to say? I completely agree with Uzoma. I think the identification project is a very, very crucial one.
Okay.
The BVN project was a big one. It's a big deal for us.
And why can't we use BVN?
Well, I don't know why they're separated, but I do think that once we get that identification thing right in the country, I think that'll be solve a lot of our infrastructural problems in terms of identifying people, being able to give them a palliative or even send money to their accounts and all of those things. So I think it was a disaster what happened with the COVID thing at the time. So I just hope that we get this identification process right and we have a unified way of identifying people across the country.
But only BVN though. Why can't we use BVN and why won't we push for it? What's the rationale?
I do not know. I cannot answer that question. I do not know. I would have thought that it would have worked. I guess maybe there are only 40 million or so identified BVNs. So maybe there are more people that don't have bank accounts and they're not opening bank accounts. Maybe that's
so. Is this a financial inclusion thing? Like, so people don't have bank accounts, so we can't give them BVN. So
maybe that's
Uzoma.
But BVN is a banking thing. If you go to many parts of the world, people don't have bank accounts, right? They have social security number, they have a national identity number. The most important thing is that there's a connection between all the identification.
Yes.
It's like in the UK, I can take my driving license, I can take my passport, and I take an identity that is a bona fide one that is linked to a central system.
Right.
Because you might, like we said, Nigeria has the highest number of poor people in the world.
We do.
More than India and China put together. So why am I getting BVN if I'm poor? But at least I'm a citizen of Nigeria and I should have an identity, or I work and live in Nigeria. So I let me have that one. Because many people might not get passports because they will never travel. So that's a form of identity. So I do my passport. People are not going to drive because they can't afford a car, but that should be a form of identity that is bona fide, that can be linked. So I think name ties everything together.
It's a fundamental.
Get a driving license, I use my name. If I want to get a passport, I use my name. If I want to get BVN, I use my name. So this is a very strategic, important project that really, I hope it's successful.
Exactly.
We hope it is too.
It's long overdue as well, so we're rooting that.
We're all rooting for it. Okay, so just coming back to the intentionality of being socially conscious, and in terms of your organizations and being the what should I say now? Like your values, your purpose, etc. So, do you find, and this question goes to you first, do you find that the vision, value, etc. all sort of and I think everybody probably does, just basically addresses the different stakeholders in terms of addressing their interests, if that makes sense.
Well, at VFD Group, this is the case, right? Our mission statement says something about building a socially conscious ecosystem for the environment that we're operating and stuff like that. So and this is not even new. This is probably about 6 years old. So it's top priority for us. Like I said, the stakeholders are particularly excited about it. Our customers are excited about it. Our employees are excited about it, and ultimately, our shareholders are also excited about it. So it's always been a very conscious, deliberate thing for us at VFD.
Okay. So one part of it is to have those statements, but how does that translate into the culture? And how do you make sure that we're living what we say we want to do? Because a lot of people have all these nice plaques. So
we have this recurring strategy sessions, and we set goals, the goal settings that we have for the organization, and would be like, okay, this year, what do we want to achieve that is in line and in tune with what our mission statement is? Everybody contributes. We list them on there, and through the course of the year, we measure the execution of those things. We carry everybody along, and we're totally accountable to the staff in the organization. So that helps us to deliver.
So if I saw a VFD staff today, do you think that they would say, VFD is a great place to work, and I feel like a valued stakeholder?
Well, I hope so. I think they will tell you that VFD is a very competitive place to work.
Very capitalist place to work.
It's like if you deliver value, you will like it. If you're a high flyer, you will like it. If you want to leave a legacy in life, you will like it. If you're a winner, you will like it. And all those things, I do believe, are the key things that are necessary to create a better society. Because I liked what Uzoma said earlier, the quote of Abraham Lincoln, which I'm paraphrasing, that you can't weaken the strong to strengthen the weak.
Very true.
It's very, very true. So unless you're a high flyer and you're delivering value, then that way the multiplier effect of what you're doing can cascade down and it can affect very many other people.
Fantastic. Uzoma, so Sparkle, the essential ingredients they say for building trust is just basically in terms of your purpose, your strategy, culture, values, and governance. So at Sparkle, do you have that basically working hand in hand in view of your key stakeholders?
Yes, I'm certainly. As Sparkle, we have. We're value driven and principle based. So first of all, we don't have rules; we have values, right? And our values. Our values are human values. So one is freedom. So the first one is freedom. Trust, freedom. Freedom, trust, transparency, inclusion, personalization, and simplicity. And those are the values that run through. So we make sure that, first of all, those values are integrated into our processes, our platform, and also how we deal with customers. And so freedom is about, digital. Being able to do things independent of people, being able to do things without asking people. So we don't want humans. So why should you talk to somebody for something to be done? So everything is purely. So we try to automate everything. And simplicity, and everything is interconnected. So simplicity is good. When we were building the Sparkle platform, we just said, if a 10-year-old can't understand it, it's not simple enough.
This is true.
So it must be simple. Our chatbot, we have chatbot technology. We're leveraging technology to make sure that we're inclusive, so everyone can access it. But we're also now, it's going to be Igbo, Hausa, and Yoruba, so that we can include a lot of people. So we're keeping it simple, keeping your language inclusive, right, and personal. And the chatbot is about personality. We're also going to use machine learning so that your chatbot gives you suggestions based on you. And we use data. So our messaging, we try to make sure that when we message people, we're messaging people with the data that we have on you and not everybody else. So we don't want to bombard people all the time. But beyond that, you have to be deliberate about, because it's very difficult. Take gender, for example. And so we want to have 50-50. And so you have to wake up and say, okay, how many people do I have? Okay, so today, because today we're a tech-driven organization, there are not many women tech people. So what you find is that if you are not delivering about certain actions, you will never meet your target.
You never have a balance.
Programs to get women in, right?
Yeah.
But try to make sure that, okay, all right, we know that right now the long-term plan is to help more women go into tech. But in the meantime, every other role, if it's finance, go and find a woman. So like when we're looking for finance role, forget all the men. And
it's being purposeful.
You have to be deliberate about what is not measured is not done. So we have measurement for all these things. You have to even bring all those values that are difficult to do. You have to have a measurement. What do you mean by freedom? How do you measure it? Right?
Important.
How do you measure? How do you measure trust? What's the definition of trust? Trust is failure. The opposite of trust is failure.
Right.
Or transparency is talking, or lack of information. That's what we do. So beyond it, we have, and that's all in our mission and vision statement, but we have to integrate it into our working day life. So
that's right.
Even at the end of the year, we have awards for all those values. We have the Freedom Award. Okay. We have the Trust Award. And people choose on that. So those are the things that we're trying to make sure, right, that we sustain that culture and those organizations.
Fantastic.
So for example, when we're doing video calls, everybody has to have a camera on. It's not off because it's not an audio call. It's actually a video call. And then people
why do they have to have their camera on? That's like, what if I just don't want to?
It's transparency.
Transparency. That's one of the values. Gotcha. Fantastic.
You are free to be in the kitchen and have a call as long as you are being attentive.
Yeah.
We know that you're at home and it's different. So, we want to make sure that you're there, you're present, and also there's security. You're not somewhere where you're divulging secrets as well. You're not paying attention. To see is to believe.
I agree. Absolutely. Very interesting. Sounds like a great place to work. So you've heard Uzoma and how they sort of live their values through their everyday activities. And one could argue that maybe because it's a smaller sized organization, right? And with VFD, how are you able to demonstrate these values apart from the goal setting and do you understand? So
yes. So our values are integrity, innovation, teamwork, and newly empathy. We added empathy after a strategy
I like
session.
Empathy. Let's focus on empathy.
Exactly, and I want to talk specifically about empathy.
Right.
Yeah. So we had a strategy session, I think in 2018 December, thereabout, preparing for the new year, and empathy generated a lot of debate in the organization amongst everybody. What does empathy mean? If we start embracing empathy, does that mean that we'll be soft as a company? We've always been competitive. What will empathy do for us? And the whole idea,
people think that's
it's really interesting. But the whole idea when we're pushing the empathy as a value system is it actually drives our business. So the key thing is if you can put yourself in the shoes of the other person, either customer or another colleague or your regulator or your auditor, whoever it is, once you're able to put yourself in their shoes and understand where they're coming from, there's less friction and you will solve their problem. And our work is about providing solutions. So if a customer calls you and you answer the phone, for example, and maybe you can't actually solve their problem at that point, or we have so many groups of businesses, for example, and a customer who is angry about something can call about maybe a bank, about VBank, but the person that answered the phone works in the asset management. We've seen situations where they say, I don't exactly, I don't work in this unit of the business, let me transfer you here. But I'm saying put yourself in the customer's shoes. He doesn't care whether you work in asset management,
he just identifies you.
He's called the organization. Just hold on to them until you solve the problem
and make them feel like they've been listened to.
Exactly. Even if you're going to transfer them to another unit, don't do it in a way that is dismissive and stuff like that. And since then, eventually we imbibed empathy as a core value, and now we're teaching it, and it's really working.
How are you teaching it?
First and foremost, we're trying to let people know that it doesn't mean that you're soft.
Which is very important.
This is very important. So it doesn't mean that you're soft. In fact, it adds to your strength. The vulnerability or the understanding what the other person is feeling or helps you. So that's what we're doing. And then little by little, I think it's been embraced from the top of the organization to the bottom. So I'm quite happy to see it work out in the organization.
Wow. Fantastic. Great stuff, gentlemen. Like this has been such an insightful conversation and very interesting and informative, and I'm sure that everybody would agree with me. We've only got 1 minute to go, and I was going to just say, a couple words from both of you. If you just 10 seconds, Uzoma, what do you want to say to the listeners about stakeholder capitalism and shareholder capitalism? Just one word.
There will be a balance in the world. There will be a balance in the world for progress in the world.
And I love the Abraham Lincoln quote. Absolutely,
quote.
Yeah.
Every talk I give now, that's what my opening line is going to be that.
Me too.
Yes.
Fantastic. Niyi, your last words before we sign out?
Balance.
Okay, so everyone agrees, and I agree, even with my socialist hat, that balance is absolutely important, and there's a time for everything, as Uzoma had mentioned as well. So we're in the age where socialism is critical, but at the end of the day, we need capitalism to survive. And on that note, ladies, gentlemen, wherever you are, thank you for listening. It's been an absolutely exciting conversation. Please tune in same time, same station next week as we bring another exciting conversation your way. I remain yours conscientiously.
Thank you.
Thank you.